I was very angry because nobody was over here who I could actually talk to.
3 years later, most of us had friends who had AIDS, and some of them had died.
I've seen people die of a lot of things, but I've never seen anything as cruel and as horrible as AIDS.
You know, you realise what an incredibly deadly disease this is and how badly we need to fight it.
They were asking people to promise that they'll help to reduce the stigma, the discrimination, and understand the human rights issues around HIV/AIDS.
HIV is a virus that affects many different people, and it's not just about sex.
Hi, I'm Lyn Bence, and you're watching Studio Q. We're on location at Federation Square for the World AIDS Day concert. I'm here with Bruce, who's been living with AIDS for a long time. Bruce, how has AIDS affected your life?
In a way, it's affected me a lot, especially with housing, getting employment, just general living, as in I've had to rely on the pension, which is not a full-time thing. When I was working, I was earning between $600 to $700 a week, and now that I've had to rely on the pension, which is now only about $400 a fortnight.
My best friend Shane Walker was one of the first black men to die of AIDS in Victoria, and it ripped our hearts out. And the most hardest part about it is sitting there watching the person with AIDS over the last 4 years of their life. It robs them of their pride, it robs them of their dignity, it robs them of everything.
And to get public housing has been a big fight. I've had to use so many support programs and units out there to actually combine to get a form of a triangle for people to work together.
Yep.
And to actually wake up the government to say, look, we're out there and we need proper housing and we need proper caring and proper support, which is lacking out there. I contacted it over in America and was told by the American government over there to come back to Australia and keep it quiet and find out, and it wasn't actually on official Australian records that I became diagnosed in 1982. So there was that 2-year difference where I was left in the dark and virtually knowing nothing about it and being given the death sentence by the medical profession at that time when they didn't know how things were going to progress, etc.
Steve, why are concerts like this so important?
Well, I think it's very important that people understand that HIV/AIDS is still a major problem in the world, and I think there is a tendency for people to forget about that, and this is all about awareness, telling people that there are 40 million people infected with HIV, and that's right across the globe. But if we look even in our area, in the Asia Pacific area, there's about 8 million people infected with HIV. So it is the major infectious diseases problem in the world today.
So to Indigenous people, this is a very important day, and it's a very important thing that we get behind, black, white or brindle, and support. And not only support the people who have got the AIDS, but there's some sort of support mechanism for when that person's gone and the people that are left with the grief and the pain of seeing people in that state.
Why is Gang Cheng playing today as the main act? What does AIDS mean to the band? Just awareness, or?
Well, there's a couple of things. A good friend of the band is a guy called Vince Lovegrove, and his son young Troy Lovegrove, died of AIDS many years ago. One of the first, actually, and that left a deep impression on all of his friends, on all of us. But also, as a child, I spent 4 years in East Africa growing up, and just seeing the AIDS statistics from sub-Saharan Africa, you realise what an incredibly deadly disease this is, and how badly we need to fight it.
There are 12 million AIDS audience in Africa, AIDS orphans in Africa. That is more than half the whole of the Australian population. Last year, more than 2 million new kids were found to have AIDS, and more than 13 million women in sub-Saharan Africa have AIDS. In Botswana, almost 1/4 of the whole population of the country have AIDS. This is breathtaking stuff.
I know the governments are doing some things. They put in how much more money needs to be put in to help raise awareness?
Well, I think we need more money certainly for raising awareness, but we also need money to be able to educate people about how HIV is transmitted, how people can avoid infection, and we need lots of money to help us develop better drugs and better vaccines to prevent HIV infection.
The government still has to recognise that this disease is still going to go on for many, many years, and that we need the funding out there and the backing of the Australian government to actually help us to reduce the increase of what it is nowadays.
Yeah, drugs prevention's come a long way with helping people with HIV. Is there much more to be done? Can you get your cured maybe in 20 years' time?
I think there's an enormous amount to do. We do have some very good treatments now, but we're not even close to a cure, and we're a long way away from a vaccine. So there's an enormous amount to be done still.
When I was first diagnosed, I only had one drug out there, and it was AZT, and it was killing more than what it was actually curing. Nowadays, with the combinations of retrovirals out there, they're coming to a stage that people will not have to take a handful of drugs anymore to keep alive, that they'll only have to take one a day. And this is the whole aim, and into prevention and to help others.
And are the drugs on there on PBS, or you have to pay for them out of your pocket?
Some are on PBS, some are that I do have to pay for myself.
Which are expensive.
And being on unemployment or being on the pension, It does become very expensive because you've got to resort out your whole budget again, because you've got to pay your rent, you've got to pay your payments, put food on the table, and etc. And paying that extra for medication that is not covered by the government is that added burden and stress upon you.
Has been increasing rapidly in the last 10 years. What's been the major cause of that?
Well, actually, if we look at the Australian numbers, what we saw was Australia doing extremely well in controlling infections, but certainly over the last few years, last 2 or 3 years, we've seen an increase in the number of infections, the number of new infections, and that's due to a number of reasons. One is that there's a greater number of people living with HIV because they're living longer and the treatments are better. Another is, I think people clearly are having more unsafe sex, and we need to target that group and educate them, talk to them about their sexual health and ways of preventing the transmission of HIV.
Their attitude has become more complacent. They don't want to know. They don't want to be aware that it's out there, and they think that HIV and AIDS is actually just like picking up gonorrhea. You can take a tablet and be over it within a short time. That is totally wrong. HIV is with you until you virtually drop dead of any cause, and people have to nowadays, especially the young people, learn to stick a condom on, put a pad on when you're having sex, especially with two women having sex, and for the guys to actually be a lot more aware and a lot more cautious out there.
Do you know he's performing soon? Performing soon. Oh, you've given a condom for him. So here you go. Thank you very much. That's very... Oh no, it's floating away! Well, that's nice. Read it. Be careful. I haven't touched one of it. Oh, okay. Don't be silly. Wrap your willy with it. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Great. It's quite lovely. Great prevention. Lovely messages there. All right.
And condoms, yeah, absolutely.
It's just vitally important that young people are educated about the potential risks of drug use and unsafe sex, and I fully support that message. I think it's something that parents need to talk to their kids about it at young age. So because kids are getting sexually active younger, so it's an issue that we just all got to be a part of, I think.
And this is the main point that we've got to put over to a lot of people, is that you can only get HIV sexually or using drugs, sharing needles, and bad living habits.
Yes.
If you don't feed yourself, if you don't have a proper roof over your head, you're going to end up on the streets, and you're going to end up picking up every other disease that's under the sun to try and keep money in your pocket so that you can actually have something to eat.
Yeah. And also, there's also a lot of people who might have the disease that are actually not getting help. Is there any way you can make them aware of, or if they know they got it, if they can actually, they don't tell their partners because they're scared of being rejected?
Well, I think there's a number of issues there. One is that we have to encourage people to come forward and be tested. So there's a number of people who have never been tested who don't know whether they're positive or not. And then obviously we need to decrease the amount of stigma and discrimination against people who are positive, and certainly that's part of the campaign here with the World AIDS Day concert, that we're asking people to promise that they'll help to reduce the stigma, the discrimination, and understand the human rights issues around HIV/AIDS, and certainly that's a very important issue.
Friends that I have told, and even work colleagues that I've told, have backed away, and I've never seen people turn around and do a quick turnaround and go in the opposite direction, or totally avoid you to think that by shaking the hand that they're going to get it.
We don't feel like our people, even today, understand where gay people are coming from. And to Indigenous people, from then on, year after year, we buried a lot of our men with AIDS. And all we hope is by having things like this today, and by everybody talking freely and openly, that people with AIDS don't have to run and hide. People with AIDS can come out. Because you go into a lot of places now and you see people there, and if someone's got AIDS, everybody treats them like they've got a disease or something like that.
By SMSing 0428 Burnett 0428 Burnett. Or you could just, another way of helping you remind yourself is buy these fantastic little things, what are they called? Wristbands? Yes, absolutely. The devil sells it.
Concert's been going for?
This is the third concert, sorry. I thought it was the fourth. No, this is the third concert that we've had here at Federation Square, and these are to coincide right around the world with all the other World AIDS Day concerts, because World AIDS Day is obviously on the 1st of December.
Yeah, the World AIDS Day on the 1st of December is everywhere around the world. In Burma, where I do a lot of work, we have quite a big event where we bring all of our partner organisations who we work with together and have a big concert similar to this one. So it's really, really important for raising awareness and just helping people understand that HIV is a virus that affects many, many different people, and it's not just about sex, heterosexual sex or men who have sex with men. Drug users in our region are one of the most important populations that we need to address to stop the virus from spreading.
And you think they're helping to raise awareness, or just a free concert?
Oh, I think absolutely. I mean, I think we've had a great crowd here today. There's lots of young people and they're all learning about HIV/AIDS. There's been lots of good talks as well as good music and pamphlets handed out. So no, it's been going very well.
I think when we're talking about sexual transmission of HIV, I think yes, people are starting to understand. But when we're working with injecting drug users, they remain one of the most stigmatised portions of the population. And we're always having to fight this battle about the moral aspects of drug use. You know, you shouldn't use drugs. Drugs are bad. But what we try to say is we have to recognise that some people are using drugs and will continue to use drugs. And we've got really good skills and technologies and programs that can allow these people to continue using drugs in a non-harmful way.
I didn't really know anything, but I just came to have a look at the bands and have a bit of fun.
So I know you're here to have a great time and listen to these dancers and prancers and fabulous bands, but I hope you're also here to lend a hand, to look after yourselves, and as I said, to look after others around you, to sign up to Burnett's I Promise campaign, to help yourselves, all of those around you, to take personal responsibility.
I've done extensive travelling around Australia, and I've noticed that there are only hardcore people who are HIV who are actually trying to get out there and do something and to improve other people's lives and to get the word out, saying that you cannot have you can't play around with the drugs, you can't play around with the sex like you did many, many years ago and think nothing of it. Yeah. You actually have to take a responsibility yourself and responsibility for others, and actually telling them that you won't die of HIV, but if you're not careful, you're going to die of every other form of STD that's available and that's out there.
I know very little, and I'm so glad I came today because I've learnt so much already, that women are really susceptible to getting the disease, which I never realised, and that so many people around the world have the disease, and it's really sad. And today is a time when people like us can do something about it and take action.
Monique, have you learnt anything here today?
I learnt that there's a lot of people with the disease, and there's not enough things being done about it, and we need to help.
We've still got a lot of people in our community with AIDS. It's not going to go away unless everybody starts communicating and we unite as one and fight this together.
drugs are HIV positive. Very few people who inject drugs in Burma have access to clean needles and syringes. So this man was at a really high risk of becoming HIV positive. People who inject drugs especially are one of the highest risk populations in Asia for being exposed to HIV. As you know, blood is a really efficient way of spreading the virus, and when people share contaminated injecting equipment, they're really exposed to the virus. So we see in Asia, amongst people who inject drugs, about 70% of them are HIV positive. And he wasn't able to access treatment for his tuberculosis. So to treat his pain, he started to smoke heroin. Over time, his tolerance to heroin built up and the cost of the heroin increased, and he started injecting heroin.
Up on stage you mentioned that you'd met a man who was a drug user. How did you come to meet him in the first place?
One of the things I try to do when I'm working in the field is go out and meet as many people as possible. One of the programs that we support in Burma was able to go out into the field and contact this man and provided him with cleaning needles and syringes. After trust was built with this particular man, he was able to come into the drop-in centre, and over a period of time we were able to give him treatment for his tuberculosis, give him clean needles and syringes, integrate him back into his community, and after about 3 or 4 months we saw this guy, his drug use decreased significantly. He was treated for his tuberculosis, which he is now cleared. On this particular occasion I was in Burma and we went down onto the Chinese border, walked down into an open drug market, and there's probably 4 or 5 people sitting around selling heroin and amphetamines, what we know as speed in Australia. And this particular man was there, and he had built a relationship up with our outreach workers, and we just got started talking, and I was speaking through a translator, and he wanted to tell his story, because he believes if we understand and we can hear more positive stories like him, then people who don't really understand what's happening with drug users and the problems they face, the more people who hear these positive stories will be more open to allowing, and pushing these harm reduction measures further and further out and reaching more and more drug users. So I just wanted to tell this story because through giving this man needles and syringes and showing that we did care about his health, we're actually be able to help him integrate back into his community, treat his tuberculosis, and also ensure him employment.
And your program obviously helped him a lot because is he clean now?
Sure, he's cleared his tuberculosis. He's really got his drug use he's managing his drug use, he's working, and he's living back with his family. So, he's now a functioning member of the community, and the story that he tells, he's a happy living human being from a couple of months ago being a very, very sick man. So, I believe by giving him needles and syringes, we've saved his life.
Now is for a very important part of the afternoon. In respect to those who have actually passed away as a result of HIV/AIDS throughout the world, as we made mention, since the beginning of this pandemic in 1981, more than 25 million people throughout the world have actually perished as a result of HIV/AIDS. That's more than the entire population of this country. So in respect to those people, in respect to their families, we now ask you to bow your heads for a minute's silence. Thank you.